G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more PlanetSide 2 content. Today guys, I wanted to have a chat about directive weapons. You know, these have been a talking point in my Twitch chat a lot lately, and I wanted to do a video on them discussing their design and how we can make them feel a little bit more like a worthwhile reward, I think is the words I'm looking for. For those who are newer to the game, directive weapons are the reward for completing the master level directive of a certain weapon category for your faction. Now to do this, you need to gain the Araxium medal on normally about 5 different weapons in said category. Now each Araxium medal requires 1,160 kills per weapon, so that ends up being a total of around 5,800 kills in total to complete a directive. So, there's no getting around it. 5,800 kills is a solid amount of kills, and it's a solid amount of grinding as a result. A player who can really farm in this game to the T will still take a couple of solid days worth of farming to score the number of kills required, and that's using the more meta weapon categories like LMGs, assault rifles and carbines. If you're going for things like pistols, sniper rifles and shotguns, and sometimes maybe even SMGs, it can take even longer. So, for achieving this task that is going to take most players a significant amount of time, it's pretty fair, I think, that players should ask for a reward that warrants said achievements. You don't want to spend all of these hours working only to get an in-game banner and a directive score increase. You want something tangible, something you can use in-game. Thankfully, that's where the directive weapons that I mentioned earlier come into play. These are designed with the intention of giving players who complete these trees a unique addition of the starter weapon of that category for their chosen faction, adding a little more flair from the faction flavor to give those weapons a bit more of an identity. They also glow and shimmer and have this sort of living metal effect, so if you're into that sort of thing, it's a thumbs up for you there too. For this video, we're going to use the LMGs as a bit of a case study and use them to make the point that I aim to make in this video. The LMGs are as per follows. The TR get the T9A Butcher, based off the T9 Carve. The NC get the NC6 Godsaw, which is based off the NC6 Goresaw. And then you've got the VS, which get the Beetlejuice 54A, based off of the Orion VS 54. You get the gist. So, after 5,800 kills, you can unlock these weapons. Let's have a look at what they actually offer that are so different from their standard counterparts. We'll look at the Beetlejuice first. It features identical stats to the original weapon, but comes with the added heat mechanic that replaces the standard magazine of the weapon. As a result, the weapon never has to reload per se, but it will overheat after 50 consecutive shots fired before incurring an effective overheat penalty of 3.28 seconds. So it'll take that amount of time to cool down if you overheat the weapon. The weapon will cool down itself 0.5 seconds after you stop firing it without overheating it, and will also even cool down if you have another gear item like your pistol or rocket launcher pulled out. It's a pretty nifty mechanic that really makes the Beetlejuice one of the most effective weapons in the game for solo players who, for one, don't want to rely on engineers for ammo, but can also manage their heat to produce maximum uptime. This weapon is unparalleled for uptime in the LMG category, there's no denying that. Next up, the NC6A Goresaw will come under our magnifying glass. This weapon features the Goresaw's iconic damage model, but sports a built-in forward grip, compensator and high velocity ammo, which effectively allows the Goresaw to be a more accurate version of the Goresaw if the Goresaw's not running any attachments. So, I guess that's a nifty benefit, but free attachments don't really matter that much when you're going to have those attachments on the standard issue weapon anyway. The real benefit, I guess you can call it, with the Goresaw is that it trades 35 rounds of the magazine capacity for a quicker reload time, making this version of the Goresaw a little bit more effective at assaulting positions. As a player who finds themselves reloading after every kill, it's just a habit that I have, the less punishing reload time helps out a lot in that front, so I do like the Goresaw overall. It also comes with a unique fire mode that transforms the fired rounds into small armor piercing rounds that can dish out light but sustained damage to armor targets. It's a niche mechanic, but something that can be really fun if you have a collection of mates all doing the same thing. No one expects the AA Goresaw squad. Anyway, it's fun, but not universally applicable as the Beetlejuice overall. But then we arrive to examine the T9A Butcher, and, well, this little bundle of tricks is literally a T9 Carve with an additional 19 rounds per minute fire rate and a 50 round bump in the magazine size. That's literally it. Imagine that, you spend all that time getting 5,800 kills only to score 19 rounds per minute rate of fire and 50 rounds per magazine on the default weapon that you've had all this time. You'd feel a little ripped off, wouldn't you? The unfortunate truth is that a lot of weapons fall under the same category that the Butcher does. They are merely versions of previous weapons, only with some slight adjustments to stats or maybe with some built-in attachments for free. And more often than not, the slight adjustments to stats come from the built-in attachments that you get for free that, you could always just attach to the weapons that they're based off and get close to the same effect. In any other game environment that demands this amount of grinding to unlock a weapon for what is essentially a quote-unquote late-game reward, normally you would be granted a legendary weapon or item that has insane modifiers or quirks that made it powerful in the right circumstances. That just isn't the case here, and I can sort of see why this is the case here, why the conservative approach has been taken with directive weapons. In the sandbox environment that is PlanetSide 2, there is no matchmaking, and it's a PvP environment, which means that players who have been grinding and playing the game for years on end will face brand spanking new players who have just picked up the game for the first time. Now, if the developers gave these veterans extremely powerful weapons as rewards for their time spent with a weapon category that are just universally better over other options, it's gonna make the new player experience feel even harder, which in turn sees less new player retention. So I can understand the hesitation to go a little bit crazy. However, in my video where we discussed the potential of the missions and the mandate system that the developers are working on, we mentioned the importance of there being a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that justifies what a player is doing as being a positive experience. Right now, most directive weapons don't quite fit that bill at all, with some being straight downgrades from their original components by having really strange attachment options or just strange builds applied to them. Now, before I go any further, because I can hear you all typing it right now, yes, there are exceptions to this status quo. The Beetlejuice and most Vanu directive weapons as a whole are an exception, as they come with the heat mechanic that, quite frankly, tips them somewhat close to being borderline overpowered in some situations. There's a reason that 99% of VS heavies at higher levels run the Beetlejuice. The mechanics around it make it a clear choice. I'm going to review this weapon in full at some point to create a greater discussion surrounding this weapon and its heat mechanics, but for the sake of transparency and time, I personally believe that the Beetlejuice would be a hell of a lot more balanced if it had a shorter overheat threshold, only being able to fire like 35 rounds or so before overheating, and if it didn't cool down while being out of your hands. It's basically a free reload mechanic, and that's something that personally I think is just way too powerful. If anything, I actually believe that the Beetlejuice is one of those weapons that actually crosses the line and comes across as a universal upgrade over some of the other weapons in the arsenal, which is not at all what directive weapons should be doing. At this point, why would you take the Orion over the Beetlejuice once you had it, Despite me ragging on and on about making directive weapons more worth our while, there needs to be a balance, and in this case, the Beetlejuice has gotten a little bit too much love, in my opinion. There are also some weapons that make strides towards being unique, but in my opinion still fall short in being generally cool enough to strive for as endgame content. Like the Godsword, the AF4A Fortuna, and the Brawler, they're all half decent, don't get me wrong. They're serviceable directive weapons that are actually fairly effective, and they come with cool gimmicks that aren't normally available to them, but they're just generally tied down to existing mechanics and don't break any barriers that make them desirable in the long run. So, for example, the Fortuna is just a mercenary with an underbarrel shotgun on it. Now, that underbarrel shotgun is a mechanic that you don't see on many weapons, but it's still something that exists already out there, and it's not as exciting as it could be. The Brawler, yes, it's a hell of a meme. It's a shotgun on a shotgun, and that is just as bad as NC as it gets, but you could really do some more cool stuff, in my opinion, and really give the weapon a bit more flavor. So how do we fix this? How do we find a balance between giving these directive weapons something that makes them desirable, unique, spitting images of their faction's identity, all the while making them balanced and fair when you consider them from the perspective of a brand new player? Well, I think a big ticket here is to treat these directive weapons like quote-unquote legendary weapons as a will, and use them as a way to show more intense sides of a faction's potential weapon design. Give them something that is extremely unique, something that you don't see on any other weapon in the game, but at the same time is really just all about the faction flavor. For example, let's look at the T9A Butcher, the weapon that is one of the most universally hated directive weapons on the battlefield, I think, overall. I know there's a few people out there who like it. I think Commander Sirius, for one, really enjoys the Butcher, but it needs some faction flavor, so let's give it some. My suggestion would be take away the magazine entirely and replace it with a belt-fed ammo feed, right? And this, this ammo feed could come out of the weapon and wrap around the TR Heavy Assault arms as he's, lugging this big LMG around. It's got a unparalleled ammo capacity, but as a result of that, it's also got a stupidly long reload to counteract that. And you know what? Stuff it. Let's go a little bit further with the creativity here. You've got this massive belt-fed style ammo delivery system. Let's really double down on it and make this more of a bulwark holding style of weapon, more of a defensive orientated weapon. Let's just say, for argument's sake, when you're aiming down sights and you're using the Butcher, you project a small personal hollow shield in front of your weapon that protects your head to upper chest area, right? It's sort of like a personal or hollow shield that can take off a couple of shots before being broken, and then, you'd go back to regular damage. But while you're using the Butcher and aiming down sights and projecting said hollow shield, you move inherently slow. You've got a speed debuff that's not like, say your aiming down sights movement multiplier cuts down to like 0.25 times or 0.1 times even. It makes you a true bulwark that can hardly move. But at the same time, you have this massive ammo belt feed, and when you're in the right cover, you're an extremely powerful element of a squad holding a capture point. Like, you can have so much fun with the creativity on these weapons. It gives it a unique effect, it gives it a unique role on the battlefield, and most importantly, it makes it desirable, and it gives the players a sense of accomplishment for unlocking it. It's a new play style, and something new you can explore for late game content, and it's something that will allow newer players, once they get through that early progression in the game, they can then see that there's more progression for them to focus on in the late game, which helps to keep them around even longer. Now, obviously, guys, there are a lot of directive weapons in this game right now, and a lot of which need some serious work to be a little bit more worth the grind that currently blocks you from unlocking them. And I'm not going to have time to discuss each and every one of them in this video, but let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like for us to do a video like that. A video where we take a look at all the directive weapons and redesign each and every single one of them to make them unique, spitting images of their faction and give them unique mechanics that are balanced, but at the same time provide a new playstyle for players in the late game. Hell, we can even do a live stream where we get the community together and we all go through the directive weapons and basically redesign them from the ground up. That could be kind of cool, I think. We could have a lot of fun with that. Either way, guys, that's going to conclude today's video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to backhand that like button, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to backhand the subscribe button whilst you're at it to keep up to date with all future video releases. I've got some good content on the way for you guys this week. We're also going to be a YouTube live stream later in the week on Sunday. It's going to be our first YouTube live stream. You can go to the community section in my channel to see the actual stream schedule, so be sure to be there for that, guys. It's going to be a fun time. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.